Hey mama, I'm Trish, and I need to tell you something that might tick off some people in the birth world. Birth doesn't have to be terrifying. It just needs to stop being a stinking mystery. After 16 years as a labor and delivery nurse, catching over 1,000 babies and birthing 6 of my own, I got fed up watching scared, unprepared moms walk into delivery rooms. So I created the birth education I wish every mama had. Real talk from someone who's been on both sides of that delivery room door. Right now, I'm giving you everything: my 3 signature birth courses, monthly support calls, my brand new birth pod class, and 30 days free in our mama membership. Plus, I'm shipping you my labor birth comb absolutely free. This little tool is a game changer for natural pain relief during contractions. That's over $4,300 worth of birth education, plus a physical tool delivered to your door. Your body was made for this, mama, but you need to know your options. Get the Calm Birth Bundle at labornursemama.com/calm, CALM, because confident mamas have better births. You get a 14-day money-back guarantee, lifetime access, and it's available right now inside our app. Stop letting birth be a mystery. Get educated, get empowered, get the bundle, and get your birth comb free. Good morning, everyone. This is going to be such a fun podcast today. I have Kelly Coy, one of my VBAC Lab students, and you might hear some sweet little noises because she is snuggling up with Carter right now. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited.
I'm so excited. So I wanted to start out because you came to us on the VBAC Lab. So just quickly, can you tell us your first birth and what you were looking for and why you decided on the VBAC Lab?
Yeah. So my first son is almost 3, so they're almost 3 years apart. So I don't feel like I prepared a ton for my birth the first time around. And basically, long story short, I ended up getting recommended to be induced at my 38-week appointment because my blood pressures had been running a little high, but there's a myriad of reasons why I don't necessarily think it was, a real diagnosis of gestational hypertension. But at the time I was worried about, not doing the thing that the OB is recommending. So we just kind of went along with it, and I was not dilated at all. My body really wasn't ready at that point. But so we went ahead and went in with the induction, and they ended up trying to induce me for 3 days, and really never got past about 4 centimeters. And I didn't have the education that I do now as far as what I should have been doing, moving around and all of these things that would have helped facilitate me progressing more. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, they had my water broken and everything. They started worrying about infection, and I still wasn't progressing. And then we kind of ended up getting left with a C-section. And then I ended up hemorrhaging after and having some post-op complications from that as well. And it was like a 7-day hospital stay all in all, which was pretty rough. So I knew I wanted to do things differently this time, and really, really wanted a VBAC to try and have some form of, kind of redemption, just to do what my body was made to do. And, I just don't feel like the C-section needed to happen in that circumstance. So just wanted to learn more, advocate for myself better. And I really found that through the VBAC Lab, which was awesome.
Remind me how you found us.
I found you on Instagram. Well, so okay. Instagram, but it was somebody recommending your podcast. I actually was going through my phone this morning, and I found, I think what must have been the very first screenshot of your podcast from a gal I followed on Instagram, which was a little over 2 years ago. So
I need to shout her out. Who was it that you were following? Was it another student, or was it an influencer? Or?
I don't think so. I think it was an influencer. She was okay. Beach body coach or something like that at the time. But I don't think she was a student, but I just came across her on Instagram, and she had your podcast on there. So I found that and started listening to it periodically. And then looked into the courses after that.
And then became one of ours.
Yeah, I actually ended up purchasing the course while I was still like trying to get pregnant. So I was like way ahead of the game because I was very determined to get that VBAC.
Did I know that? I don't know that I knew that.
I think so. I think I posted on the like in the Facebook community initially. Okay. And I think I had said like once or twice, I kind of popped in. I was like, hey, not pregnant yet, but here I am and just trying to learn and everything. So
it's so
I was kind of in the background for a while.
How many of my VBAC Lab students come that way?
Yeah.
They come when they're still trying because they just want to be as educated as possible before they choose providers, before they start navigating all the roadblocks.
Right. Yeah. So I'm glad I did it that way. It gave me a chance to go through the course, like 10 times because I'm very type A. So I was like, I'm doing this.
And just so you guys know, tell them a little bit about your background, which is, I feel, is funny too. Like that plays into a lot of it.
Yeah. So I do work in the medical field. So I'm a PA. I work in primary care. I've done that for about 4 years now. Been a PA since 2018. So I do have some medical knowledge, but not necessarily in the OB realm. So, even as a provider myself, when you're out of your element, you still don't feel super confident going up against, the specialist. So it was tricky. So we had some different things that came up along the way that had to kind of decide between, which, it was nice to have some of that extra knowledge, but kind of trying to find that balance where you're not pushing too hard, but still advocating for yourself and everything too.
Yeah, because ultimately it comes out to like, if you don't, you're going to regret that. If you know that this situation is not best for you and you're like, I don't want to speak up and I don't want to, argue with the providers, then you're going to regret that a lot.
Yeah. And there's always that fear as well. You're like, okay, if I do go against what they say and something bad does happen, especially if they're waving this diagnosis in your face, that can have complications. Then you're like, well, if something bad happens, that's on me and I'm going to have to live with that.
Yeah.
So it's a tough decision all around, but.
Yeah, it is. And that's why even in both my courses, I say we can refuse anything, but should you? That's where the education comes in. That's where knowing how to ask the right questions, asking for them to print the studies that they're quoting. Because what I have found with my students, a lot of the doctors, when they're like, well, can you go print that study? They're like, well, this is, and they blow it off because there is no study really. Maybe they heard it at a conference or they heard it somewhere, but they really don't have proof. And I love that for my moms listening who aren't in the medical field to hear that it's a struggle for us in the medical field too, because there's a balance. So let me ask you about the journey this time, because I know you navigated some things and I would love for you to talk about the baby aspirin, because I get asked that on the daily, that someone's being recommended to take baby aspirin for this reason or that reason. And I just want you to kind of chat with why they were recommended baby aspirin for you and how you came to the choices that you came to.
Yeah. So with my first, my blood pressures, I had a couple high readings in the office, but that first pregnancy, I really didn't monitor it a whole lot at home. So we really weren't totally sure what my baseline was, but with it running a little high, basically you run the risk of developing preeclampsia. And a baby aspirin can help reduce the risk of that. And the earlier you start it, the better. But so this time around, with how everything played out, and I felt like I was a little passive, so to speak, kind of in my decision to go through with the induction last time, just, a little bit out of fear. So I looked back through all of my notes through my chart and everything and tried to piece back together more objectively with some of my medical background, trying not to mix it up too much with my having been obviously personally going through it, to kind of determine if I felt like it was a really real diagnosis and if I was truly at risk for it in this pregnancy. And I really felt like it was not that way. And so I thought about it for a very long time. We talked about it multiple times for a series of months.
Yeah.
On the hangouts. Yeah. And I did my own research on it and listened to some other, evidence-based podcasts on it. And I just ultimately, it just didn't sit right with me and I wasn't at peace with it. So I decided not to take it. And, I felt very confident through that. I monitored my blood pressure all throughout my pregnancy, and it really did stay pretty much in normal range. It did kind of end up backfiring a little bit just because I ended up with a kind of atypical presentation. I ended up actually having preeclampsia, but not necessarily the typical presentation they normally see. So it was kind of funny, not haha funny, I guess.
Yeah.
So if I ever did it again, I would definitely do it this time around. But at the time, I was not just at peace with it, and thankfully everything turned out fine. But
yeah, so you would do it next pregnancy?
I would. I think now that I've seen the labs and everything to justify that, the diagnosis truthfully was there this time around.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't, the typical presentation where the blood pressure kind of shoots up and you've got all the symptoms. Mine is really just based off some abnormal labs in my liver enzymes. But just knowing where that ended up this time, I do feel like I would be more comfortable doing it the next time around if we have another one, which we're not sure right now.
Okay, I was wondering.
We'll see.
So tell us
Keep going back and forth.
Tell us about Carter's, your pregnancy journey. So for those of you guys listening, you probably know by now because I talk about it a lot. When you join one of my birth classes, you also get our pregnancy hangouts. We call them happy hours. We have a VBAC happy hour once a month on the first Monday of every month. And then on Wednesdays, we have our pregnancy happy hours. And you were really involved. You were there.
Yeah. I tried to be at every VBAC one for sure. And then I wasn't able to be at all the pregnancy ones, but I tried to pop on whenever I could. Just ended up kind of falling during bedtime for my toddler.
Yeah.
So we tried to do it whenever I could. But
well,
yeah,
we do the VBAC Lab a little bit later.
One.
Yeah.
Yes, knowing because of toddlers involved. Yeah. So that worked out well.
Yeah. That was my beta students. When I launched the VBAC Lab, I put it out there and I'm like, I want 15 beta students that can help me create the best VBAC course ever. And all of them were like, we can't hang out at 6:00. So we started it. We used to do it a little bit later, but it was too late for me. So, but yeah, that's why we do that. So how did you feel like the VBAC hangouts helped you, and like in what ways? What would you say about that?
Yeah, no, I thought the hangouts were really helpful. It was nice to have a group of women, not only that were pregnant, but had, that were also striving for that VBAC and had similar goals and similar experiences and, some element of kind of some birth trauma a lot of times from the first time around. So just having that community and kind of solidarity in that. And then being able to talk through some of those decisions with somebody else besides just my husband who, doesn't have that medical background. So it was nice to be able to kind of feel things out and hear what other people are, going through or questioning as well. And, questions you may not have even thought of that. Just being able to even be a fly on the wall for that aspect of it, hearing other people's stuff get brought up it was really helpful.
That's what I love about the VBAC Lab, because you might hear someone discussing something that's, 15, 20 weeks ahead of you. And you're like, oh, okay. And you kind of store it in your brain. And then you face that same thing and you're like, oh, that's how she handled it. Or you hear another one like, that's how she handled it. And now I have some options on how I can handle it.
Yeah, I noticed there was a lot of blood pressure stuff that got brought up. So I think it really opened the door for some good conversation with some of the other girls as well.
Yeah.
Which was nice to see.
So tell us about your birth. We want to hear days leading up.
So I had a very smooth pregnancy with him. I was very lucky. I have pretty smooth pregnancies. I just tend to have exciting births for whatever reason.
At the end, yeah.
So I ended up going into labor actually on my due date that night. I remember waking up around 11 o'clock that night with some mild contractions and wasn't able to really sleep great through them. So I just kind of tossed and turned, got up, went downstairs, kind of wandered around a little bit, tried to do some stretching and, bouncing on my ball and stuff like that. And then in the morning, things just kind of kept going. I sent my husband to work. I was like, nothing's crazy happening. Things are still kind of slow. So he went in for half the day and I just hung up in my bedroom, had some candles lit, had my ball and just trying to be mellow and just let things progress and just try to stay as calm as I could and really just try to rest up as much as possible. And so I labored really all day and into the evening, into the night. So I talked to the midwife with my group a couple of times, and ultimately, as things continued to progress and things started to get more intense that that evening, so it'd been almost 24 hours that I'd been in labor at that point. When things were starting to get a little bit more intense with the contractions, we decided to go in around 10 o'clock or so that night. So I was 40-1 at that point, and then got in. I was 5 centimeters when I got there, and then got checked in. I knew I wanted to do some laboring in the tub, so they went ahead and started to get that set up for me, and just kept going through the contractions. My husband would come over and do some counter pressure, hip squeeze stuff for me, kind of whenever I needed that. And then they checked me again. They wanted me to be at 6 centimeters before I got in the tub, so did that, and checked me again after a little bit, and I was at 6 to 7. So then I got in and I spent a couple hours laboring in the tub, which was really nice. I do think it helped a lot. I mean, obviously the contractions are still ramping up, so it's not the most, you're not just hanging out completely, but it did help quite a bit. And I kind of ended up stalling out a little bit at 7 and was in the tub for probably a couple hours or so. And they checked me again. I was still at a 7. And at that point, it's been well over 24 hours. I haven't really slept. We're all kind of getting a little bit worn out, and I'm just wanting things to pick up a little bit. So we're just kind of talking about our options at that point. And my water had not broken yet. So they brought up the option if I wanted to have them break my water to have that kind of speed things up and, knowing things would pick up a little bit or a lot of it after that. So I did end up deciding to have them do that. It ended up being a little tricky just because right around the time after they broke my water is when all my blood work came back. And that's when my liver enzymes were like quadrupled what they should have been. And that alone during labor is a diagnosis in and of itself just for preeclampsia. So they kind of told me then, I'm not low risk anymore. So then they said, we really need you to get out of the tub. So that was kind of bad timing because then right after they broke my water, it did intensify quite a bit. And then getting out of the water pretty quickly after that, things ramped up quite a bit, we'll say. So got out of the tub and I was really trying to get through contractions. They started getting a lot more intense and we were talking about options at that point. I was interested in maybe doing the nitrous oxide because it is available at our hospital, but I was struggling a little bit at that point that I wasn't sure. Knowing as a VBAC, I could have been pushing for quite a while just since I hadn't had a vaginal birth before. So I debated between the nitrous versus considering an epidural. And when they checked me when I got out, I was at 8 centimeters and I was starting to think a little wacky stuff. So in hindsight, I'm like, I was probably in transition.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was really not sure. I was like, if I'm going to be potentially pushing for a few hours, I was like, I'm not sure if I will be able to do this for
and
another
all of
few
this
hours.
was happening while we were asleep. Your labor bat signal team was asleep.
Yes. Yeah. Everything happened at night. Yeah. So this was
of course
probably at like 3 a.m. or so, or something like that. All the times are kind of a blur, of course, but so that was kind of tricky. In hindsight, I would have loved to try the nitrous. And I think I was starting to get a little panicky. So I think it might have helped with some of the anxiety at that point. But again, I didn't know how long or how much relief it would give me. So at 8 centimeters, I knew, it was kind of one or the other and had to kind of make a decision and roll with it. So at the end of the day, I did end up deciding to go ahead and get the epidural. So they came in and sitting still through those couple contractions of getting that was probably the hardest point of the whole thing because all I wanted to do was like throw my body in a different position. And so my midwife I had at that point was amazing. And she let me just clench onto her with all my might and, just kind of do whatever I needed to do without to not move while they got that set up for me. So they got that all set up. It unfortunately didn't work super well. And it was placed, I think, a little bit off to one side. So like one of my legs was really, really numb. The other leg was barely numb. Like I could still move my feet, but my stomach was fully numb. So, and then I could still feel contractions, like enough that I was still groaning through them, pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they tried to add another dose of the medicine and it still really didn't do much. So they checked me and I was at 10. I was complete at that point. So they were like, you know, if you're uncomfortable enough, do you want to go ahead and try to start pushing? And I was like, I don't know what else to do. So let's just do it. But because my stomach was so numb, I couldn't feel the muscles I needed to push effectively. And, you know, having kind of this wacky, like asymmetrical numbness, I ended up on my back, which is not necessarily what I originally wanted, but that's kind of where I ended up. And it was kind of hard. Yeah, it was hard to push in that position and hard to
especially
really feel if I was doing it effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like my stomach in my part of my right leg was like the numbest part of me.
Yeah. Because the tug of war would have been perfect for that.
So they did end up doing that. So I ended up pushing. So we tried for like a half hour or so and really wasn't making a ton of progress. So they tried just kind of flipping me back and forth for 30 to 60 minutes to try and see if he'd drop a little bit more. And then they'd kind of come back and we'd regroup and try again. Of course, at that point, that's like right at shift change. So then I'm getting a new nurse, I'm getting a new midwife. And I loved the team I had, at first, and the team I had that came on was fine, but I don't feel like they were quite as encouraging, which was a little disappointing. But at that point we were just kind of in it, and that was kind of what it was. So so then we did pushing. They ended up putting the squat bar up for me, mostly just to put my legs on to get some leverage. And we did the tug of war.
Did you do it with the squat bar and your feet on there?
So we did both. So we did it with like one of either the midwife or nurse or somebody kind of just pulling against me. And then they did it where they wrapped the sheet around the squat bar and I had both ends of it. And then I would just pull and had my feet up on the squat bar as well. And
that's one of my
push
favorites.
That way, since I was pretty numb.
Tug of war is no joke.
I think it really helps.
Feel
I did that
after.
I have never been more sore in my life.
Oh my God.
That next day, I've never been more sore.
So I did it with Ashley.
Between that and my back.
Yeah. I did it with Ashley. So for you guys who don't know, if you're new here, I have my courses, but I also have my Mama membership called Mama Society. And Ashley is our community manager. She's also our postpartum doula. And she asked me to be her doula for her birth. And so I went there. And normally I had gotten throughout my career, I used to do it, but I would be so sore. But also it's really dangerous for your nurse because you can slip right into someone's vagina, which is not fun. And so I started doing it with the squat bar for both those reasons. But with Ashley, it was Ashley and I was the doula family member, right? So her and I, like, she could hardly move her arms for like a week.
Yeah, no, that's about how it was. Like, I think the first few days, I think my arms and my back were more sore than anything else.
Yeah.
Which was
that's how
wild.
Ashley was.
Like, I literally felt like I did
But it works. It works to get the baby, I say for the roadblock. So it works to get the baby up and under like the pelvis. It just, and over that tailbone, like it works. And what I love about it is that when you can't feel those muscles, it's activating them anyway. Like you don't need to feel them,
right,
Tula. You just need to pull,
Yeah. So that's really what they utilize.
So
we utilized that pretty much the whole time. Or they had handlebars on the side of the bed. It ended up, all in all, it ended up being like 4 hours. Which was, it was a lot. I was very, very tired. And, having not really slept for a couple of days at that point.
Labor's no joke.
It was no joke.
It's hard work.
I know you've said, I know you've said on previous podcasts and on your birth course, they don't call it labor for, no reason. And that's 100% true. It was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. But it's so
it really
worth
was.
It, right?
And it was it was definitely worth
So
it.
tell me your
So-
recovery differences besides not being able to move your arms or back for a week because of tug of war. Let's ignore that,
Yeah.
all of you guys, because tug of war is my
Yes.
favorite go-to for a first-time mom. And if you're a VBAC mom who has never gotten to complete and pushing, then you're basically a first-time mom when it comes to vaginal delivery. So remember that tug of war is the best. You might have been pushing longer.
Yeah. I looked back, I think some of the timestamps, because I had a friend of mine take birth photos for me, which was so cool. But yeah, I think all in all, because he was born, I think I started pushing, well, she shift changes at 7. So I had that little like half hour of, trial. And then I think it was another 3 to 3.5. So he was born at like 11:30 that morning, but it was a long way. But I did get to help like deliver him. So I got to help pull him out, which was
I love
so
that.
cool. So,
I
it was
love that.
it was a long process and very, very challenging, but to be able to do that and just like pull him straight up onto my chest was like amazing.
I did that with
And
Bryson
you
too.
forget
He's
about
my
it all very
only one.
quickly.
Yeah. It is such an amazing. So if you guys are listening, you're like, what do you mean? So what she's talking about is that you can actually be the one who pulls your baby out and up onto your chest. So basically what you do is you lean down, you put your hands under the baby's armpit, and you want to do it that way because that anchors a little more because they are a little messy and slimy. So it's nerve-wracking. Like every time I would, so if we had something go on and I had to bring the baby from the birth to the warmer or what have you, I'm like locked down. That's why we hold the babies the way we do. And people look at us like, oh my God, how you're holding that baby is horrible. But it's safety wise because they are messy.
Oh yeah. They are slimy. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you pulled him out.
Was so cool.
You pulled him out, put him on your chest. And at what moment were you like, oh my God, it happened?
Yeah, I think like shortly after that, like it was so cool having those pictures to look back on, because I remember there's some where I'm looking at my husband, I'm like, you can just see it in my eyes, and I'm just like, holy crap, I did it. And I was like so tired at that point, but I was so happy, and it was just so, even though it was such a long labor and pushing took so long, it was still like so redemptive, and I was like, I did that thing, and it was so cool. It just I felt like on top of the world.
I love that so much. And that's, the tagline for the VBAC Lab is to have your redemptive birth. And I want to point out to you guys that, a lot, some of my students don't get their vaginal delivery, but the majority of them who end up for whatever reason having a cesarean again, it still is different and redemptive. And that's because they're empowered with knowledge and they feel like I made the choice. Someone else did not choose for me. I made the choice. And some of those students are like you. They were laboring for a long time and they're like tapping out. It's not because they couldn't have, but they just tapped out because they were done with it. Because it becomes a mind game.
Yeah, it definitely crossed my mind a few times, but I was so determined. I was like, man, this really sucks at this point. But I was like, no, I'm doing this VBAC. If he's doing well and he tolerated the labor great, there was no issues with him, thank goodness. But so I was like, nothing is getting in my way.
Yeah. So I want you guys to hear me. Here's a little strategy for you. If your VBACs are slow, they're slower. Like you've got to just look at it like a first time labor. Now they aren't always, but majority of you guys are going to have a slow VBAC. And so if you start thinking, I'm done, I want to tap out, maybe say, okay, when I say that, I have to wait 2 hours and then have to reevaluate and do some different coping, do some movement, get into the mindset work, because I feel like a lot of women who do not have a successful VBAC, it's because of their mindset strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Having mindset, I mean, no matter what, if you're trying for a vaginal delivery, you have to be like solid in your mindset. It is hard work.
Oh yeah. It was hard. It was very hard. But after having gone through the recovery and with some complications from my C-section too, I just knew that was not a recovery that I was really wanting to willingly sign up for. And, I did end up with a couple of 2nd degree tears this time around and had to have some stitches, which I'm still getting through. And there's still days, I still am sore and trying to balance, not doing too much too quickly. But I think still comparatively getting your body cut open is no joke.
No,
that
it's
recovery
a major
was really, really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard. So, I would do a vaginal delivery 10 times over, even with, the tearing's not fun, of course, but I think it's been a much smoother recovery compared to my C-section, definitely.
Well, and I would love to, I don't know if I've ever asked anyone this, but I am assuming that when you're recovering from a C-section, you really can't push too hard. You just can't, because you've had major abdominal surgery. But with a vaginal delivery, I think you feel like maybe you can push harder, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I think the tearing kind of plays into it too. I've got a couple friends that just had babies and they didn't tear, and, they definitely bounce back a little bit quicker. But yeah, I do pretty well. It's totally different. It's not just your entire abdomen, all your muscles getting cut open, really. You can't lean forward. You can't like sit up. I had to have so much assistance from my husband, and I can't imagine doing it when you have a toddler already, because you've got weight restrictions that you can lift, and so there's definitely more restrictions with the C-section recovery, just given that it is a major abdominal surgery. I think trying to convince myself that just to trust the process and know that I'm getting there, and I will heal, and the soreness will not last forever. But it's been very smooth overall, so I really can't complain.
Well, I'm so happy that you came, and I'm so happy you're part of our community. We absolutely love you, and we've loved having you. So I would what are some words of wisdom for these moms out there that are like, I really want to have a VBAC. I really want to do this. What are some tips you would say before we sign up? Because I think Carter is done with the podcast.
I think he's done. Yeah, no, I think the mindset game is so important. I think, first of all, definitely working through whatever previous maybe birth trauma that you have, if you have some from your C-section. I know your course has a full section on that, which was really helpful to piece through. So I think making sure you work through that is really important, so that you can go in with a clear headspace, and then just knowing your why. If it's, just because you want to, redeem yourself, not to like prove anybody wrong, like make sure it's for you, and, just know the reasons behind why you're doing it, and then just really take in all of the education. And I think learning to really advocate, I think that was the hardest part for me, just trying to not be so passive and like really standing up and trusting that you're calling the shots, and really just kind of hone in on that, and keep that mindset and the determination to do it if that's what you're kind of really set out to do, because it's worth it.
I love that so much. And so you would recommend the VBAC Lab?
1000%. Yes. Yeah. No, I thought it was fantastic. I've periodically bopped around to different podcasts throughout my pregnancy and stuff, even just learning about other VBAC stuff. And there's nothing like yours.
I 100% believe that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And like Kelly said, like I start out the VBAC Lab with us walking through your trauma and your triggers, because we don't want to bring them into this birth. This is a new baby. This is a new birth. And if you bring all that heaviness and all that doubt and all that fear, it's going to affect your pregnancy and your journey. And so that's why I start out the VBAC Lab. I do have that also in Calm Labor Confident Birth for my moms who have already had a baby. Maybe it wasn't a C-section, but it was trauma. And then also for some of my students, because we can't control everything. And so I want you guys to have a place to be able to process that, because there's so many women that are walking around with years of birth trauma that they've never released. And so that is just so important to me. And in fact, I know, I also do business coaching mainly for women in the motherhood space. We just had an in-person retreat, and I have like 11 birth workers there, and then a couple like weird off, I've got a mental health therapist, and I've got a podcast services, and then I have my financial strategist, and she's my age. And so, which I'm not going to say what it is, but I'm not a spring chicken. And we're all talking birth stuff, of course, because the majority of us are birth. And one of the doulas was talking about some things that she does with her clients after their birth to process trauma, to process this change in your body. And my financial strategist client like starts crying, and she's talking about how no one's ever talked to her about that. There's so many women that are walking around with such heavy trauma from their birth experience, and it's BS. Like, it's not good. So just so you guys know, when you join my birth programs, this is why it's holistic, like all of you. I want to work with you. This is why I do my hangouts, because I don't want you to just buy my course and then like, if you had just bought the course and not done the hangouts, do you feel like it would have been as powerful for you?
Not as much. Like, I think especially having some of those things come up during the pregnancy, like the aspirin discussion and some things like that were really weighing on me. Having the people to discuss it with and being able to discuss it with you and Allison and, you know, the other girls during the hangouts, I think was really, really valuable.
Yeah. So, and that is why what's so different about me and a lot of other people who have birth classes are like, you're crazy. That's so much. But to me, that's what sets me apart, is that relational aspect and having access to me. But anyway, we're going to cut this short because Carter probably needs to eat. And my dogs have been very good, you guys. So we're really proud of them. I usually lock them up, and today I did not. But thank you so much for being here today. I just so appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Oh, wait, one question. What is one word you would say that describes your experience with the VBAC Lab, like after taking it? One word.
Probably, oh gosh, empowered.
Okay, I love it. That's the normal word most people say. Well, go take care of Carter. Thank you for coming today.
Hey, Mama, I hope you enjoyed that birth story with my VBAC Lab student, Kelly. I just love my students so much. If you have not joined my birth classes, why? Check out the links in the show notes or go to labornursemama.com/calm. And you can use our podcast coupon code POD50 to save $50. All right, you guys, I'll see you again next Friday. Bye for now.